Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 73. A few days late this time, but I will explain why. I am Babydiesel. I play Division 2, and I am overly involved, probably. That said, I love the game. I love talking about it, talking about the community, and speculating about things coming in the future. And if you are in the same boat, then this is the podcast for you. Okay, so today we do not have a State of the Game recap. State of the Game is delayed for at least this week. I imagine probably another week or two as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ETF announcement and some stuff around that. And then I'm going to tell you about my baby. This episode is called Babydiesel Arrives, and if you have paid attention to my content for a while, you will know that my wife and I were expecting a child, and she has graced us with her presence. So we'll be talking about that. I'll announce that so that you don't feel obligated to listen. I understand. I very well may get a little emotional. But I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm excited to do this kind of a podcast. And then we can move on and get back to the regular topics. First, if you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/theechocast. Thank you to Jose, Luis, Jimmy, Mike, November, Hassan, Tim, Jim, and Ozzy for helping out with support and with, I appreciate it. My patrons are great. You guys are awesome. I'm actually one patron away from doing weekly updates only for people on there. A little video, probably selfie videos where I'll talk about what's going on and what I expect, and maybe some hot takes about some stuff. So if we get one more, I'll get those started up. Maybe you'll even get some baby videos. If you are a current or new patron, please let me know if you'd like to receive some free stickers in the mail and your Twitch name so I can make you a VIP on there. Okay, so this is typically the State of the Game recap spot. No State of the Game this week, which I would not have been catching anyways because I was at a hospital waiting for my bundle of joy to arrive. So no worries about State of the Game. I know that I assume part of the reason they were delaying those was because a lot of people are on vacation at Massive right now, especially in Sweden. I don't know about the other studios, Red Storm and stuff like that, but I have a feeling they're going to come back in the next week or two, and it's going to be the big Title Update 6 State of the Game. Maybe an idea of what's coming, maybe even some interviews with Red Storm, and even with like Bruce or Rasmus, or I can't. It's been a crazy week, so I can't remember who's in charge of the RNG and loot and all that stuff, but I suspect we'll be talking about PvP and loot when they get back. So until then, let's move on to some gaming news, some Division 2 news. Specifically, ETF signups were announced, so I highly suggest going to the Division webpage, going to the Division Twitter, and so on and so forth. If you want to get the info, there is a link. I believe it's probably some kind of form filler outer that lets you put in your stuff. Now, the biggest thing is they've been very, very clear. If you're going to sign up for the ETF, you need to make sure you have a passport. Apparently there's been multiple times before where people have signed up and been selected only to be denied because they can't go there, they can't travel. So if you're American, a lot of people don't realize in the United States, I think a lot of people don't have passports because this is such a big country that you can travel from one side of the states to the other and be basically in a different country. So you'll find a lot of people here in the US don't have passports. So if you want to do this and you sign up, you better have one, because there's no guarantee you'll have your passport by the time you need it to go, and we don't want to waste a spot on someone who can't even show up. So with that said, what I will talk about is kind of what I hope for the ETF. So my hope for the ETF is going to sound probably kind of dickish, if I have to be totally honest. I hope, and I don't mean this as an attack on anyone because it's not, but I hope that when we find out, sorry about that little notification. I hope that when we find out who's going, if we find out, the people have to announce themselves. The devs don't say who's going, they let the people decide if they want to go public. I hope I don't recognize a single name, honestly. I see the value in having streamers and personalities in the community and content creators and stuff go. In theory, they can hear from their audience. They can, hear, people can tell them what they want to see or hear, and they can get some of that input. And I understand why that may seem valuable. Unfortunately, what I think I've noticed in the past with ETF Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, this new ETF is going to be ETF Echo. What I found before is, unfortunately, it seems like, and this isn't universal, there's obviously been a bunch of great people who have gone before. Some of them were creators and had, were known. A lot of them weren't. And unfortunately, what I think happens a little bit is that there's people who go and maybe have ulterior motives, right? I would like people to go who want the game to be better, not just for themselves, but for the entire player base. I think that there's some pretty clear examples of people who went, who maybe didn't even care if the game was really better in general, but were just hoping the game would be easier to watch on their Twitch streams, or so it'd be easier to make videos for the game, for their own personal gain. That's not everyone. Again, obviously, there's multiple people. There's many people who have been ETF who I don't even know who they are. I know of a few people who aren't creators in any way, shape, or form. And even some of the people who are creators were, very valuable to that process. But I really hope that people are picked and people go who really care about actually making the game better and not just being able to make a bunch of hype videos, who aren't just going to be able to further their own careers, who are trying to go for the right reasons and not maybe less than right ones. So that's what I really hope. Now, on top of that, obviously, I hope that I hope the ETF covers all kinds of great stuff. I think that there's a lot of people, I've seen a lot of talk about, kind of naming some of the usual suspects that they want to go to fix PvP and to fix loot and RNG. What I think people need to realize is that I'm not sure if there's a cutoff date. Let's see. Okay, so it's going to be from September 4th to the 6th. And it looks like some people will be brought in on the 3rd, and then they'll go home on the 7th. So that is a couple weeks away. So today I'm recording this on a Sunday. So that's in about 2 weeks. So the thing I think people need to realize is that there's some general assumption and some reason to believe that the next title update 6, will be loot, RNG, and PvP based. So my guess is that they've been working on the PvP part of this at Redstorm for a long time. If you haven't noticed, Redstorm has basically been radio silent for quite a while. I believe it's been a couple months. And then the loot side of things, I assume the people working on that were probably taking their summer vacation. And I assume were still people working on it while they were gone. And that they're getting back now and they're going to keep working on it. My thing is that I assume most of the changes that are going to happen for title update 6 are probably going to be implemented and maybe even PTS tested before or during or extremely shortly after this ETF. And so what I think people need to keep in mind is that probably means that the ETF is going to not be too focused on that. If the PTS is coming out after or even during, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they will be looking at that. But from the previous ETFs and getting to talk to the people who were at the previous ones, I'm under the impression that there's a pretty good chance that this ETF Echo, is going to be they're going to be talking about things as far as episode 2, any title updates after episode 2, episode 3, and even potentially year 2 stuff, I imagine. That may be fairly vague. They may not go super deep into it, but these people are going to be under extremely strict NDAs. And my guess, or you know, maybe some whispers in the streets, are that in previous ETFs they've gone pretty deep and pretty far forward, and where people think if an ETF happens right before a patch, the ETF is for that patch. My knowledge, or my guess, is that that's not the case, and my guess is that these people are going to be dealing with content way in the future, which is why I don't want it to just, you know, these people are asking for this whole ETF to be, you know, the quote unquote top PvP streamers and creators, which is its own kind of joke in my opinion, because there's not really anyone who's really that big who does those things. You know, which they don't have to be to matter, but you know what I mean. So, yeah, so my expectations, I think everyone else's should be that we should really want maybe some people who really just want the game to be better, not for personal reasons, and that we should expect that they won't be dealing with content that we're probably seeing anytime soon. I suspect they'll be seeing content that's way in the future, or at least somewhat in the future. My encouragement is that if you're able to go, you should apply if you want to go. And you know, if you really enjoy the game, if you enjoy all aspects of the game, if you would like the PvP to be better, but you also want to see some more refinement in the PvE, you want to see some new modes, some, you know, if you want to talk about, you know, returning survival in the underground and stuff like that, like if you really care about the game and you're able to go, for all that's good. You know, if you don't have a Twitter, if you don't stream, if you don't make YouTube videos, if no one's ever heard of you in the community, don't let that hold you back from applying. I highly suggest you still go for it, because what I would like to see is, sure, maybe have a few known people there to give that perspective, but I would love to see some people there who aren't even on Twitter or aren't involved in the community as much, or at least not in the overall community, but they have like 1,000 hours already in the game. And maybe they enjoy other games like Destiny, or, you know, maybe they enjoy more serious PvP games, that are, you know, PUBG and some of the battle royales, or even games like, you know, the old Halo games, or you know, Call of Duty and Counter-Strike and stuff like that. Like if you enjoy like more competitive PvP games and you want to give that perspective in Division, I would love to hear that. I would love to see people go there and get that opportunity. I don't want to see just a list of a bunch of streamers that we all know and who already have a platform. On that note, I won't be applying. There's multiple reasons. One, I really don't believe I'd probably be that good in that situation. Two, you know, as I will be covering soon, I just had a baby, or well, my wife did, and I watched. I don't have a passport, and I really just have no desire to go through that process right now, even though it's not really that bad. And I don't think I wouldn't have it in time anyways. And I have an existing platform. You know, I'm not humble bragging here, but you know, there's multiple devs that if I have an idea or a complaint or a thought, I can message them or I can email them and they will probably respond. Doesn't mean I'll have any influence. I think I have zero influence actually, which I'm mostly cool with. But I can be heard already, even if it's not received well. Like I know if I have a thought or a complaint or something, people will hear it. And that's why I really don't want to just see a list of a bunch of streamers there. I'm sure I don't get access to content way before to give my opinion on it. And that's fine. I think it would just be good if people who don't have a way to be heard currently, but maybe have some good stuff to say, would get that opportunity. So there's that. Let's jump into a mid-roll and then we'll talk about a baby. If that's all you wanted to hear, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll have about 60 seconds of ads and then we'll talk about some baby time. Okay, so Babydiesel's arrival. So I kind of have this broken down into a few different sections of, you know, how we found out that this was going to happen. We found out that she was coming, and then and then talking about the actual event, and then where we stand today and where we're going in the future. So So if you haven't paid attention, let's see. I didn't start streaming until after I got married, but I did get involved in the community a few months before I got married in 2016. We moved in together, and then that following summer in 2017, I believe, was when I got on Twitter, I got on Twitch, I started getting more involved. Um, and it's kind of been a blur since then. So we got married in 16, December of 16. We were planning on waiting 4 or 5 years to have kids. If you're looking at the calendar right now, you'll know that that did not happen. Not entirely planned, but not entirely unwelcome. It's all good. But what was interesting is at the end of 2018, late, right before Christmas, basically, Babydiesel called me into the bathroom and said, "Well, this is the thing," and held up a birth control a pregnancy test that was positive, that was saying, yes, you are pregnant. And then I looked down and she had like three more. And so apparently over a couple days she had taken a few of these before she told me, because she wanted to be sure, because those things aren't always accurate. And I think she was kind of dealing with it herself. So then kicked off a secret mission, is what I called it, where we would, obviously hold off on telling people for a while. We still need to go to the doctor and confirm that it was really a thing. In her family, there had been losses of pregnancies in the past, so we knew that we're only probably a few weeks in, and there was no guarantee this was going to happen. So we were trying to be realistic. Honestly, we were probably not accepting it entirely. I think we were both kind of freaking out, because this definitely wasn't something we were looking for yet. I went through a weird phase, and I still to this day feel really selfish about it. I felt super guilty. If you've been involved in the stream or even my Twitter a little bit, you'll know that I talk about Babydiesel a lot, which is what I call my wife. I don't like to use her real name or anything, because she doesn't, she's not involved in this stuff, and I prefer to keep her out of it for the most part, but she does like being a little bit involved, and she's part of my life, and I like to talk about her. So if you've heard me talk about her before, you know that she plays volleyball, and she plays it pretty seriously, specifically some beach volleyball. So about 5 or 6 years ago, not long after we got together, we've been together 9 years currently, almost 10. We started playing beach volleyball because some of our friends did, and we came to find that in the area where we live, there's a bunch of indoor beach volleyball and outdoor in the summers. And it's pretty serious. There's some people from this area who have gone on to play professionally, and even internationally, and even in the Olympics. So it's until you find out about it, you actually don't realize it's that big of a deal. And then you find out about it and you realize it's freaking everywhere. And I live in the Midwest, where it's very cold in the winters and very wet in the summers. So it's not just a California thing. You'd be surprised. It's even in Chicago. So for me, Babydiesel had gotten to a point where she was essentially playing amateur, semi-professional, and got to the point where she actually, over a whole season, had won a nationwide contest. She had won enough tournaments to be one of, if not the best in her category, which was a couple levels down from being fully professional. And her goal was to continue moving up and maybe even get to play in some professional events, which is known as the AVP. You'll see it on the TV sometimes, on ESPN and Fox Sports, I think. It's mostly on Amazon Prime now, is the best place to watch. But her goal was to go there and play. She knew she isn't gonna go to the Olympics or anything, but she also is really good. If you've never heard me talk about us, I am about 5'10" and pretty pudgy. So I'm very average at best for male height, and when it comes to volleyball and when we play, I am short. I am very short up there. I would say the average person who I play with or against, is between 6 foot and 6'5" or so. So I hold my own pretty well. I'm a decent player, but I'm pretty limited by being shorter than them. On the other hand, Babydiesel is about 6 foot tall, so she's extremely good, and she has done very well, and she really enjoys it. It's probably her most favorite thing to do. So I went through some really rough self-indulgent guilt when we found out she was pregnant, because in 2019 her goal was to step up to the next level, the one below the professional, and to try to win that and try to earn her way into the professional to get to go play. And so obviously when we find out she's pregnant, that she was able to keep playing. She actually played for quite a while, but had to quit, well before she could earn any points to move up. And I felt pretty awful about it. I felt like I had kind of ruined her plans. The excitement of the baby hadn't really hit yet. It was more of the terror of it. And that's kind of where, I was at that point. I want kids. I've always wanted kids. We have like 20 nieces and nephews. That's overestimating, but it feels right. I've been around all of them since they were babies or before, and so I've gotten to watch them grow up, and I knew that's what I wanted one day, probably in a few more years. And so this was a bit of a shock, and while there was definitely excitement in there, there was a lot of fear and I don't want to say disappointment, because I was excited, but I was disappointed that I knew my life was going to change. And it wasn't just going to change a little bit, and it wasn't just going to change for a little while. It was going to change a lot, and it was going to change forever. So then we went and we found, we confirmed everything. We, over the weeks and months, we found out everything was good. She was perfectly healthy. Babydiesel was in great shape. The baby was developing perfectly. No problems, no issues. During this time, obviously, if you follow me, you know that this was leading up to the March 15th release of Division 2. So in February, I went out to San Francisco. She was a bit hesitant, but knew that, it was still early in the pregnancy, and she, didn't need me there. So she was happy to let me go for a couple days. So I went out to San Francisco. That was when they revealed to us details about the end game, Black Tusk. Up to this point, we hadn't heard anything about an end game faction yet. And some other stuff in the game, invaded missions and stuff like that. So that was awesome. If you look at my YouTube, it's just Babydiesel on youtube.com. You'll see some of my old videos that were relatively popular at the time, to basically just gameplay videos and some thoughts before and after. And honestly, things really didn't change that much for many months, really. Up until towards the end of the pregnancy, things really didn't feel that different. She stayed very healthy through the whole pregnancy. She was able to be completely independent. The last couple weeks, she's been, it was a little tougher on her to be as active, and but for the most part, it was a, knock on wood, easy pregnancy, and it ended up being one. So that leads to, I would say, let's go back to Monday. We'll say Monday the 12th of this month, August. So what actually happened a few days before, we went to the doctor, and her due date was the 11th. And so this was the 8th or 9th, and the 8th or 9th, and the doctor said, hey, if you want to induce next week, you can. It's normal for first-time mothers to need that. If you want to induce the following week, that's fine as well, but they don't like them to go past 42 weeks. So we decided, let's just do it on the 12th. Let's go for it. So then the weekend happens, and we, our stress levels, anxiety levels are through the friggin' roof. I go to work on Monday, and I come home, and she's a bit distraught and has decided, hey, she's healthy, baby's healthy, there's no reason to induce. Doesn't make sense. If you're already a parent, you understand what I'm talking about. If you're not, inducing means that they basically make the baby, they force the delivery to begin of the baby. So we canceled it. She called her doctor, discussed it. They agreed that it wasn't necessary, that it was just more of a convenience. So we canceled. And then Monday night, Tuesday morning, Babydiesel is not feeling great. She's hurting. Her belly hurts. She, is feeling a little nauseous, not feeling very hot. And we look up symptoms. We're talking to her. Her sisters have had kids, and we've concluded, she's having Braxton Hicks contractions. Pretty normal at this point. She'd had them before in the pregnancy. Very little, but she's had them. Or basically, it's fake contractions. It's faking that the baby's coming, right? So that Tuesday, she's feeling okay. This is the 13th now. She's not feeling great, but she's still having these Braxton Hicks. But this isn't a sign that the pregnancy's coming. If anything, we're kind of laughing that, I'm glad we were gonna get induced last night, but glad we didn't. So then Wednesday, so I go to work on Tuesday, come back, she's okay, she's not feeling amazing, but she's feeling okay. We go to bed Tuesday night. Well, I do. She doesn't get much sleep. And Wednesday, I wake up and she's not doing too well. She's getting sick. She's the Braxton Hicks are killing her. They're intensifying, which, you know, in hindsight, you know, we'll talk about that. And she's, you know, not doing too well. And so I don't go to work. I hang out with her for a few hours. We try to contact her doctors and we don't have any luck. And so it comes around 11 o'clock and we say, hey, let's just go to the hospital. And if they, you know, if it's just Braxton Hicks and you're dehydrated, you know, they'll fill you up with fluids and we'll come back home and we'll wait for this baby to come. So we go. She's struggling pretty good. We throw everything in the car just in case. The house was ready for the baby anyways. But you know, we're not really anticipating anything happening. So we drive. We get to the hospital. We struggle in. We get her to the triage unit, which is where they kind of figure out where you're at with your pregnancy and whether or not they need to keep you. And they inspect her. They check her out, and we find out that so when the baby's coming, I'm gonna give you a little health lesson here. The cervix, the opening for the baby to come out dilates. It opens up, and when it's at different amounts of opening up, you're kind of telling it, you know, where you're at in the pregnant, or where you're at in the delivery. So if it's open like a centimeter or two, that means things are getting started, but may not happen for another week or two. If it's opening up to, you know, 5, 6, you know, things are happening, things are coming. And once it hits 10, that means that the labor is about to go. The baby's about to come out. And that's the point where women start pushing. So in case you didn't know, women don't push for like 24 hours. They push for, you know, 30 minutes, an hour, maybe a couple hours if things aren't going too well. But that happens after they hit 10. So we get to the hospital. They take her to the triage unit. They get her on some fluids to get her feeling a little bit better. And they check to see how far along she is. You're supposed to go to the hospital at 2 or 3. She was at 7 out of 10, we find out. So then hindsight kicks us in the face and says, by the way, you've probably been starting to deliver this baby since probably Tuesday morning. And most people are at the hospital by 2 or 3, and she had gone more than double that. So things are happening. They get us set up, everything's fine. We go to the hospital room where she's gonna have the baby, and long story short, I won't go into too many details just because it's not really necessary, but within about 6 hours our baby was born. She was super duper healthy. Nothing was wrong. She was incredible. And just because, make sure I'm not foreboding, you know, so I'm not hinting anything, and she still is today. She's doing amazing. But she comes out. I see my baby for the first time. I freak out. My eyes are tearing up. I'm as happy as I can be. I'm looking at my wife. She's the most badass person that's ever existed on earth. And there's that. So, you know, the birth went pretty well. You know, Babydiesel, you know, had some issues, but she's gonna be perfectly fine. And then they after a couple hours, they move us to our room that we're gonna be in until we leave. So they typically keep first-time moms a couple nights to make sure everything's going okay. They have to make sure she's fine. They have to make sure baby's fine. Some things can crop up, you know, a day or two after the birth. So the first night goes really well. I've never really dealt with babies before, so I'm pretty horrified. I'm hiding and letting the nurses do all the changes and everything because I don't want to touch that droopy-headed baby. I'm afraid I'll hurt her. But for the most part, the first night, the baby slept most of the night. You know, obviously she's exhausted from coming out. Babydiesel did not get much sleep, maybe an hour or two. I was in the same boat. Then the first day, the first whole day we're there comes. This is Thursday, and it's just all day, in and out. Doctors and billing people and insurance people and this and that and the other. It's just chaos all day. Some family comes through. Comes and sees the baby, brings us some food, comes and hangs out, takes the pressure off of us a bit. And then the second night comes. Well, see, this first night we got cocky. The baby slept most of the time. It was pretty easy, nothing too crazy. And then the second night comes. This is Thursday night, Friday morning. And she screamed bloody murder for hours. and it was awful. It was a nightmare. If you pay attention to my Twitter, you'll see this tweet where I say last night was a nightmare. Then I posted a super cute picture of her in the morning of the baby. That was rough. And in hindsight, what we realized is that she wasn't getting any milk. And that the hospitals, and this is a whole different rant I won't bother with. Hospitals nowadays try to go for this certification of being a good baby hospital, and what that means is that they basically discourage use of formula and encourage breastfeeding. So they basically make you breastfeed, and to say the least, and are not real big on pushing formula, even if the baby hasn't eaten in hours. So basically, we say that we need formula, and we force them to give it to us. We feed the baby, she calms down Friday morning, and we realize, that that's a thing. So then on Friday, they do some more stuff. Some more doctors come. Pediatrician checks her out. Everything's good to go. Babydiesel's doing good. She's fine. She's recovering well, and we're allowed to go home. So we load her up. We bring her home, and then we walk in and we put her down, and we just kind of look at each other, and we realize that we left as 2 people, and now we're 3, and it's pretty eye-opening. So the first night, Monday night or Friday night was a little wild. Babydiesel was crazy generous and basically told me to go upstairs to our bedroom and sleep. And I thought she was going to give me a couple hours, and she ended up giving me 6. I slept basically all night. Came down, she was a bit distraught. I told her to go and sleep or do whatever she wanted, because it was, she had done more than her part. Feeding was a bit rough the first couple days. I stand here now on Sunday afternoon, and we've kind of figured everything out. A nurse has come to our house and checked the baby out and checked out Babydiesel. She's good. Everything's good. We had a second night last night, Saturday night. Went extremely well. I stayed up about half the night, and the little Babydiesel slept all night. Then Babydiesel came and relieved me, and I went up and slept the other half of the night, and she stayed up. And things went pretty well, The big things, we're feeding her, we're cleaning up her poops and her pees, and we're burping her, and we're rubbing her belly so she'll fart when she's not feeling too good. The toughest thing right now is she cries, you try to feed her. If she won't take food, and you check her diaper, and probably do it the other way around. Make sure she hasn't peed or pooped. And then it gets weird, because if all those things are fine and she just ate, it's probably gas. And for any parents, you're probably laughing right now, and you're remembering when you figured all this stuff out yourself. If you aren't a parent yet, I would say heed my advice, but you'll forget, and that's okay. You'll figure it out on your own. And then we stand, and Babydiesel told me to come up and record the podcast. So that's what we're doing. So now, she knows that doing the podcast and the streaming and all that is really important to me. She's been highly encouraging. She actually wanted me to do this on like Friday. But we're busy. We're figuring things out, but I was happy to do it now. And, as we move into the future, as we kind of figure out our schedules and get back to work and get back to doing things, she's going to get back to volleyball. I will as well. I'm going to try to get back to the community and taking screenshots and making videos and doing podcasts and streams. Maybe not quite as often, but still doing them, staying involved. And staying involved in the community, where I'm sure a few people will be bummed about that. I bet some people thought that this baby would be the end of my involvement, but this is my outlet, and it has been for a long time, and it will be in the future, and I'm excited for that. So if you like what I do, you may not get as much of it, at least for the short term, but I don't really plan on going anywhere. So there's that. So there's the story. And that's gonna be the podcast. I need to get off of here, finalize this, post it, and get back down to my baby. So if you want to support the podcast or any of my other content, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/theechocast. Like I said, if we get one more, I'll be doing weekly video updates, which will probably feature baby. If you're on iTunes, please rate the podcast and leave a review. I read every one of them. Or if you're on another platform that allows you to leave reviews, I get those as well. I love reading them. And it helps me get noticed, to be totally honest. I am Babydiesel on Twitch, where I'm gonna try to start streaming again, a couple times a week. I'm also Babydiesel on Twitter, where you can catch my thoughts and so on. Right now you can see a bunch of baby pictures, and she's pretty adorable, if I'm not too biased. And that's all I have. So until next time.